Hey everyone, it's your Peacekeeper coming at you with a premium ship review. This is the much anticipated Tier 8 USS Alabama, a South Dakota class battleship. As a member of the South Dakota class battleship, she is the first South Dakota class battleship in the game and one that you can actually visit today, which is just absolutely fantastic, which is part of the reason why this ship had come to be as a premium ship in this game. As a member of the South Dakota class battleships, she slots between the North Carolina class and the Iowa class in terms of production history. A lot of the design for the Iowa class was borrowed heavily from the South Dakota classes, such as the overall armor scheme and certain aspects of the superstructure. The Alabama was nicknamed the Lucky A because she did not lose a single person on board due to enemy action. However, during the war, she did suffer some casualties when a gun safety lockout for one of the 5-inch 38 caliber dual-purpose gun mounts allowed the turret to fire into the back of the adjacent turret, which killed 5 men and injured 11 in the mount. Alabama would go on to receive 9 battle stars for her service during World War II. She started her career off in the North Atlantic, escorting Arctic convoys from Great Britain to Russia, as well as in Operation Governor near Norway, which was an attempt to distract the Kriegsmarine as to the true landings that were about to take place in Sicily. Operation Governor was also aimed at drawing out Tirpitz from her fjord, but ultimately it failed in that goal. From there, Alabama sailed to the Pacific, where she participated in several invasions of various islands occupied by the Japanese during the island-hopping campaigns. She also escorted several fast carrier groups during this time and is credited with shooting down 22 aircraft throughout her entire career. She would participate in the Battle of the Philippine Sea, one of the last carrier-versus-carrier engagements of the war, and during that engagement, her air search radar picked up the approaching Japanese aircraft at 190 miles, which was further than the newer USS Iowa that was in the same fleet as her. At 140 miles, she again reported the aircraft, and this time Iowa was able to confirm that the aircraft were approaching, and this began the battle. This battle would go on to be called the Great Marianas Turkey Shoot because of the number of Japanese aircraft shot down, totaling in the number of 400 plus aircraft shot down during the engagement. Ooh boy, in terms of her in-game play, man, for those of you who are all about waxing nostalgic about closed beta, this is a ship you have to pick up. Why, you might ask? This ship's maneuverability is exactly the way Iowa was during closed beta, with that tight 710 meter turning radius and really fast 12.3 second rudder shift time. This ship is freakishly maneuverable. Alabama also shares Iowa's detection range of 12.2 kilometers with a full concealment bill, which makes her unbelievably stealthy for a ship that packs 9 16-inch guns, firing the famous 2,700-pound Mark 8 shells. And if those shells find a citadel, you can count on lopping off 13,100 damage from your target for each citadel hit you get. Her AA, while slightly worse than North Carolina, is still quite potent, and any difference is basically negligible. North Carolina carries 3 additional quad 40mm Bofors mounts, but 8 less 20mm Oerlikon mounts, and it kind of ends up being a bit of a wash. Yeah, those Bofors are a little bit more effective than the 20mm are, but at the end of the day, it's hard to notice the difference because both ships have such ridiculously powerful AA complements. Going back to those guns, the gunnery on this ship, while it's less accurate than North Carolina, and she lacks the ability to get the dispersion module of the Iowa, she still packs an unbelievable punch, and when you're playing her right in those closer engagement ranges, that 10 to 15 kilometer range, you're not going to notice the difference in dispersion between her and the North Carolina. She still is going to destroy just about anything that gets in front of her and presents anything resembling a broadside. She also shares the North Carolina's lowered Citadel hitbox, which means that she is far more entertaining to play in close engagements and is less likely to disintegrate from multiple Citadel hits in those engagements. However, her armor scheme does allow her to take more normal penetrating hits from battleships and cruisers, which still adds up quickly. Overall, I feel like she takes damage comparably to Iowa, which is just slightly more than the North Carolina does, and it has to do with the fact that her belt armor sits inside the ship, and we have all of this 38 and 32 millimeter sections here that, kind of they'll take in shells, but the belt behind it will actually stop them from penetrating through. And as a result, you tend to take those normal penetrating hits more. But she trades all of that off for having the highest TDS of just about any U.S. battleship, and certainly the highest of the fast battleships, at a whopping 50% reduction with the Damage Control Systems Mod 1 thrown in under the upgrade modules. I cannot believe how fun this ship is to play chasing down destroyers, because taking torpedoes to your torpedo bulges basically it tickles. And enemy CV aircraft, if they make it to you in one piece, they aren't going to do a whole lot of damage with their torpedoes. Let's go over her stats. She has 63,300 hit points, which is less than North Carolina, but she does have a fairly decent amount of armor, 310 millimeters at the belt. It is angled 19 degrees, which gives it an effective thickness of about 13.5 inches of armor, which is comparable to the old standards in terms of thickness. There's that 50% TDS. The main battery is three 3-gun, 16-inch, 45 caliber Mark 6 guns. Those are the same guns that are mounted on the North Carolina, but again, the Alabama has a lower sigma value, which means she's just slightly less accurate than the North Carolina. They are mounted in 2 turrets forward, 1 turret aft. And this rear turret, you have enough maneuverability, and this is one of the strengths of the ship, is with that maneuverability. You can angle your ship just enough to bring the rear gun in and then tuck it back in to dodge enemy incoming fire. It's really a lot of fun to play it that way, where you just kind of peek out the rear gun, shoot, and then tuck it back in. The secondary armament, you have 21.1 kilometer main battery firing range, which at that range, I'm just going to tell you right now, your chances of actually hitting something with these lofty shells is nearly impossible. I wouldn't count on doing it at max range very, very often. Don't expect hits at max range anyway. Her secondary armament does consist of 10 of the dual 5-inch 38 cal dual purpose mounts. They are mounted 5 per side. Interesting side note, USS South Dakota was outfitted as a flagship, an Admiralty flagship, and is missing one of the 5-inch 38 cal dual purpose mounts because they added a new boardroom to the wings. Just an interesting random aside. In terms of their range, 6.3 kilometers, that's going to be with advanced firing training, but without the secondary upgrade that pushes the range out a further 20%. With that, I think it's 7.6 kilometers is where they get pushed out to. Not a horrible range, but U.S. secondaries are notoriously unreliable for secondary builds, at least for the Tier 8 and Tier 9s, Montana notwithstanding. Her anti-aircraft defense consists of 52 single 20mm Oerlikons, 12 quad 40mm Bofors, and those 10 dual 5-inch 38 cal dual purpose mounts. She has a 28.9 knot maximum top speed with that speed flag at 27.5 without, 710 meter turning radius, 12.3 second rudder shift time. Her detection range by sea is 12.2 kilometers. That's unbelievable. And 9.4 kilometers by air. In terms of our upgrade slots, because I'm running preventative maintenance on my captain, I definitely recommend taking Auxiliary Armaments Mod 1 instead of Main Armaments Mod 1. And this is going to make it so that your AA gun mounts have more hit points, 100% more. So you're doubling the hit points of all of your AA guns. It just helps your anti-aircraft stay alive longer. If you do take main armaments mod 1, or because you're not running preventative maintenance, or you just really don't want to lose your main guns, by the way, it doesn't happen very often, you can certainly take that as your other option. I personally run the auxiliary armaments mod 1 when I'm running preventative maintenance on the captain, because the preventative maintenance takes care of the main guns, but does nothing for your secondaries and anti-aircraft guns. So this helps keep those guys running. In the second slot, I definitely recommend AA Guns Mod 2. None of these other options are really all that viable. I suppose if you wanted to push the secondaries out to that 7.6 kilometers, you could do that. I just don't find it to be that useful. Main Battery Mod 2 is pretty much useless on a US battleship because all of the guns turn very fast for a battleship. Adding more at the expense of reload time is never a good trade-off. And adding more range with the really rather large dispersion circle, it's really not going to help you at all to add 16% more range. So with that, I run AA Guns Mod 2 to push out our AA a full 20%. And that gives your maximum AA bubble 7.2 kilometers. Sorry, the secondary range would be 7.2 kilometers then. 7.2 kilometers with your 5-inch 38s, 5.1 with the Bofors, and 2.9 with the 20 mils. In the third slot, Damage Control Systems Mod 1 is definitely the only option that's worth taking, and this is going to reduce the risk of getting on fire or flooding by 3%, as well as boosting that TDS by 1%. In the fourth slot, I definitely recommend taking Steering Gears Mod 2 if you are the type of person who prefers to be mobile. This reduces your rudder shift by 20%. If you're one of those people who likes to do the bow in, move forward and back shenanigans, Propulsion Systems Mod 2 isn't a terrible choice. Personally, I prefer steering gears. I prefer the faster rudder shift times and more maneuverability. Believe it or not, you can actually turn this ship around fast enough to avoid getting citadeled to death by enemy battleships. So you wait for the enemy battleships to shoot at you, you kick the rudder over, or you anticipate it, and kick the rudder over as soon as you can, and you can turn around in time to avoid getting citadeled with the Steering Gears Mod 2 on there. In the last slot, I definitely recommend the Concealment Systems Mod 1. This is going to help reduce that detection range by 10%, as well as increasing the dispersion of shells fired at you by 5%. That's new for patch 0.6.3. Target Acquisition Systems Mod 1 certainly has its uses, and I can definitely hear the people screaming, "Oh, but I want to be able to see the torpedoes. I want to be able to see the torpedoes." I'd much rather suddenly pop up broadside, on the broadside of a cruiser at 12.2 kilometers and just delete them in one fell swoop. Instead, I find concealment to be far more useful than this, especially considering the fact that I have a pretty good idea, generally speaking, of where torpedoes are coming from, and with the maneuverability of this ship, it is quite easy to duck through torpedoes. Anyway, enough of me talking about this ship and its upgrades. Let's go on into that battle video. So as I said in the first part of this video, this ship's maneuverability is incredible, and it's hard to really describe that, so definitely something worth paying attention to in this match. You can see it when it comes time to bring that rear gun to bear. You can see me just kind of like poking it out and wagging the tail, as I used to call it. It really is like, and I heard one of my clanmates describe it like this earlier, it really is like a U.S. standard, the tier 6 and tier 7, the New Mexico, Arizona, and the Colorado. It's like the early tier US battleships in terms of maneuverability. It's like they decided, hey, we want to make a US standard that's 27.5 knots. Yeah, you did a really good job. I mean, this ship is unbelievably maneuverable. And like I said, if you were in during CBT, during the closed beta, and you played Iowa before they nerfed the rudder shift times to appease destroyer captains who were complaining about battleships being too hard to hit after the detection nerf for torpedoes, this ship is basically the original Iowa in terms of its gameplay. In fact, I'm 99% sure that the ship's stats are almost identical to that, with the exception of maybe the muzzle velocity. Actually, for sure, the muzzle velocity. Certainly the Sigma value, the accuracy, the original Iowa before they gave her the accuracy buff. And here you can see just the kind of the angle at which the guns can come to bear. I always do that at the first part of my videos, so if you're interested to see just how much of a profile you have to present in order to bring all your guns to bear, there is a good one. This map is Tears of the Desert, which is my least favorite map in this game after Mountain Range. This map suffers from many of the high-tier map problems in that the map is so open, and in order to cover the open spaces, you either need to have high concealment, high maneuverability, smoke, or a lot of luck. And in this match, it's mostly luck. Generally speaking, I don't have a overall strategy. There's no islands for me to always go hide in and fight in, except for these islands here, right here by our cap. I'm going to go up there just to kind of see how the battle plays out. If the battle plays out in my favor, great. If it doesn't, well, you know, it is what it is. This ship does perform really quite well, and if you're familiar with the way North Carolina and Iowa plays, you will feel right at home in this ship, but you will be rewarded by the ship's extra maneuverability. And that doesn't sound like it would be that big of a deal, but the reality is that is a massive deal, because one of the problems with Iowa and its armor scheme, aside from having that raised citadel, which may or may not be changing someday soon, Wargaming said they'll consider it, that maneuverability really is an advantage because it allows you to bring all of your guns to bear, shoot, and then hide that rear gun, and it really is different from Iowa in that regard because you can't do that as effectively in Iowa. And having the armor profile that it does have, it tends to take, you know, penetrating hits a little bit more frequently than, say, the North Carolina would, but overall, it's still a very durable ship. Yeah, you know, if you're really confused as to how to play high-tier U.S. battleships, I have a whole how-to-play series for all of the U.S. battleships, but I also have a number of different reviews of the Missouri, a couple of epic battles involving the Missouri and the Iowa. Definitely worth checking those out. The basic premise of it is it's like a claymore. On the front of a claymore is written, "Front towards enemy." That is words to live by for the Tier 8 and above U.S. battleships. Just point the nose at the enemy, shoot at anything that's broadside, profit. And here we're shooting at a Gneisenau that is, you know, basically 21 kilometers out. There you can see a freakishly tight, accurate group, and it's going to come down and you're going to see probably something that's, well, a touch frustrating. We missed. Welcome to long-range shooting in U.S. battleships. Not good. We're going to try and use our range here to actually close the distance, our stealth to close the distance, as opposed to shooting at ships at max range. This battle takes a little while to kind of really broil up, but man, once we get into the thick of it, man, it's all gonna be fun. One other advantage of those 16-inch 45 caliber guns is that you do have the ability to shoot over islands. Generally speaking, it can be done. Okay, we're going to shoot. Shot over the island. You can see we cleared that island. Unknown if they will actually make it over the other island. Probably not. Doesn't matter. There's not a whole lot else to shoot at. So we'll go ahead and we'll do that. And I'm playing my bets here. I'm hedging my bets here. This northern force is really distracting these ships in the north. The southern force is really distracting the ships in the south. There's really not a push here going on in the middle. So I'm going to take this ship and we are going to push into the middle. Generally speaking, this is like committing suicide in a U.S. battleship. But, you know, sometimes it takes an unusual chain of events to cause a fortuitous change in the balance of gameplay. And this match starts off very uneven. Okay, so we've killed 2 of their destroyers to 1 of our cruisers, but we're spread out and we're taking damage across all of our ships. It's not really a good thing. Well, thankfully we got like a North Carolina over here that we can shoot at. He's basically broadside. Well, not quite broadside. If you look at the mini-map, he's presenting a pretty narrow profile. But look at that shot dispersion. That dispersion is awful. And it's not that I wasn't on target with the shot, but 2 hits out of 9, not terribly good accuracy. 1 overpen, 1 shell bounced. And then our detection drops again. And that is really one of the strong suits of this ship. Oh, hello, Iowa. So Iowa is ducking behind this island here, and he is going to allow us to stealth back up. Yep. So we got this North Carolina here. No, we're going to go back to Iowa. And that's because Iowa, he's going to come out of this. He basically is going to be presenting a pretty favorable profile when it comes to a broadside target. They're calling out the target for my division mate. So we take our shot. At closer ranges, the shots tend to line up a lot better. Yeah, 20,000 in normal penetrations. Yeah. No Citadel hit, but I'll take 20,000 in normal pens. Now, because the battleships up north are definitely more of a threat than the battleship singular in the south and the cruisers to the south, I am definitely going to take my attention and point it directly at this Iowa. Now, the secondaries are going off, which is going to be fun to watch. Yep, they're going. And we are going to do the quote-unquote joust with this Iowa. He isn't even really fully paying attention to me, and I'm trying to pay attention to the cruisers that are nearby, because those cruisers are definitely worth worrying about. And here's a destroyer trying to launch torpedoes at me, it seems like. I don't know why he didn't anticipate this being a thing, but apparently he didn't, so whatevs. So we're going to go ahead and turn our guns as close to... They don't have to be perfectly broadside, but we do need to get them pointed broadside. And as soon as the Citadel lines up, 3 Citadel hits, and he gets torpedoed? Well, either way, we've got 3 Citadel hits on that Iowa and managed to take him out in one fell swoop. And had that battle devolved, a little bit of a lag spike, had that battle devolved into where we passed each other and neither one of us managed to take the other out, what would have needed to happen there is you need to resist the urge to suddenly turn and expose your broadside to bring those front guns to bear. No, just ignore those front guns for a minute. We've turned our guns back to the left here. We are going to anticipate this Fiji coming out, and there he is. He's going to beach himself. We're going to wait for him to beach himself and then engage. Okay, shot out. And our rear gun is going to shoot at this Miyoko off in the distance. No hits on that Fiji, though. That's really kind of annoying. And what about the Miyoko? Maybe we can get a hit on the Miyoko. An overpen for 1310. We are going to push into their cap. Now, the key to this is to remember that their battleship forces are all the way up to the north. If I were to have come around that island in any other way, what would have ended up happening was I would have gotten Citadel to death, and that would have been the end of the Alabama battle. Instead, we have stealthed up, and we are going to take advantage of our stealth and maneuverability here to not come out of this broadside if we can avoid it. Have a Bismarck there at long range. And Mr. Miyoko. Torpedoes from that Fiji. There's the Fiji. Turn! Crank the engines back! Turn! And the tight turning radius of this ship is a godsend. Bring the guns to bear and poke! 1 Citadel hit. Oh. Well, still 14,000 damage, correction, and 1 very heavily damaged Fiji. And taking shots from those battleships. As I said, those battleships were definitely going to come into play as soon as we got around this. The Fiji misses with his torpedoes on that Mahan. The Mahan has another set of torpedoes on his other side, but we're going to shoot, and we are going to put this guy out of his misery right now. Yep. So he is now gone. We are up to 84,000 damage. And we've got a couple ships to shoot at here. Important note, I am by myself. I have a Mahan who just blew his smoke. I have no idea what this destroyer behind me is doing. I haven't been able to pay attention to him. We are going to bug out of this as soon as we can, because the last thing I want to do is be facing off against a whole boatload, literally, of their ships. And so the North Carolina has fired. We are going to turn. Man, he did quite a healthy chunk of damage. We got the shores here. Shot out. We are turning. And Dev Strike. Hey! That was a 3/4 health ship just completely gone. And 104,000 damage, 2 sinks. And we are now going to dive onto the other side of this island here, and we're going to let this battle kind of naturally progress. We got one battleship anyway coming up, a Gneisenau. We have a Colorado that's off in La La Land. He was up there engaging the northern forces, but due to his speed, and he probably put himself in a position where he could not accurately or actively engage the enemy ships efficiently. So we're going to go around the other side of this island. This gives us enough time to hopefully get our repair party back and get our hit point pool back. And we see this Hipper off in the distance. Unfortunately, he's just close enough that I can't shoot over this island. But the interesting part about this maneuver is that no one really maneuvered to avoid this from being a problem for them. And so we kind of get a surprise on some of their ships, even though we're detected. Okay, so the Hipper, he's engaged with something else. I'm fully anticipating having to take out this North Carolina that's at point-blank range before I can actually go in and begin engaging anything else here. And so, gonna shoot our rear gun. Oh, the island is in the way. Well, he's dead. He goes down. Now we have a problem. We have a Gneisenau within 6 kilometers. He's turning to launch his torpedoes. We're going to shoot and turn. So we take only 3,400 damage off. But we turned, and hopefully his torpedoes are going to miss. We are healing, so that's good. And there goes his torpedoes, and there goes him. Now we've got a choice. Baltimore Hipper. Baltimore Hipper. Which is the bigger threat in the long run? Well, the Hipper has torpedoes and is close, but the Baltimore is presenting a much more favorable profile, at least from my vision. And so we're going to shoot at him. 8,253 damage. Taken off in a salvo. We are now in their cap, so they are losing cap points. And you can see we are rapidly punishing their existence. Now, the Hipper has those torpedoes. They are relatively short-ranged at 6 kilometers, so we definitely need to take him out. Underled this shot a little bit, and he rudders on over, but we still managed to do 7,500 damage. We are up to 125,000 damage. Our secondaries are going to town. The fire went out on its own. The Hipper is turning, so I knew his torpedoes were coming in. So I'm going to turn, and I'm going to turn to the right. And what this is going to do is this is going to force him to turn and open up a broadside, and enough to his profile was presented for us to take him out. So now we are done with him. On to the Baltimore as the final remaining ship. We have plenty of hit points here to take him out. And line up the shot. By the way, this is my first game in this ship. I actually managed to get a crack in 100,000 damage on a loss. I didn't choose that video because it was the first one out. I felt like it was kind of maybe a false positive, for lack of a better phrase. Also, I was falsely accused, might I add, of using a bot. There was another STW clanmate in there, and somebody accused me of using him to get free kills. We lost. So I don't know. Anyway, this game ended up being a little bit better game, and there is the Citadel hit for the kill and the end of the match. Overall, a really good game. You can see how the maneuverability really plays out. 133,261 damage. 4 kills, 7 citadels, 32 secondaries, an aircraft. Only 27 shots fired. 1,966 base XP. I guess it's more than 27. It was 34 total. Not a whole lot of shots fired, but a whole heap of damage thanks to those Citadel hits. And there's a credit screen, and it is a Tier 8 premium, so it does print money reasonably well. Not as good as the Missouri, but if you don't have the Missouri or the free XP to get it, definitely consider picking up Alabama. Anyway, I'm your Peacekeeper. Like, comment, subscribe. Thanks for watching.